What stirs in the dust of forgotten oaths? The question drifts like a dying star across the void, older than any creed still whispered by trembling mortals. It rises from the black vaults of Imperial history, where the name Rogal Dorn lies entombed, but never declared dead. Across the crumbling battlements of the Imperium, the rumor returns like a phantom. The Primarch of stone, the unbroken sentinel, may yet walk again. In the quiet places between wars, tech priests hear phantom footsteps echo through abandoned fortresses. Astropaths scream of a golden shadow pacing the edge of reality, as if measuring the Imperium's wounds with a soldier's steady gaze. And in the nightmares of chapter masters, a gaunted hand reaches from the dark, demanding to know why the walls fell while he slept. The galaxy does not breathe. It waits, fearing what might return and what judgment he might bring. The eternal war bleeds on without mercy. Hive cities choke on ash. Black crusades carve fresh scars across the stars. The sons of Dorn Imperial fists, Crimson fists, Black Templars fight with a desperation sharpened by legacy and absence. Yet something shifts. In the ruins of Phalanx's forgotten chambers, runes ignite one by one, ancient safeguards stirring like sleepers roused by a distant voice. Chapter serfs swear they hear grinding mechanisms deep beneath the adamantium decks, as though ancient warplate moves of its own volition. Upon battlefields drenched in martyrs' blood, warriors pause mid-slaughter, struck by an unspoken certainty. Their gene-sire is watching. And in the wandering silence between gunfire, the galaxy feels a tremor, an instinctive dread that a long-buried truth is waking, that the Imperium's most stoic guardian has not yet given his final tally of the dead. On the blasted world of Ardament Ix, a crusade fleet uncovers a vault sealed during the heresy itself. Its walls hum with sigils of Imperial fist design, untouched by time or traitor. Inside lies an ossified throne of stone and gold, cracked but not abandoned. A single massive gauntlet rests upon its arm-adorned severed hand, preserved like a relic of vengeance. But now the fingers twitch. Not fully, not enough for certainty, but enough to freeze every soul present with primordial terror. Cogitators collapse under impossible data streams. Chaplains fall to their knees, weeping, unsure whether to praise or fear. The hand should be dead inert, forever mourned. Yet something has called to it, something vast, patient, and unyielding. And as the vault doors slam shut on their own, the ship's augurs register a faint heartbeat echoing through the stone. Pilgrims across 100 worlds begin speaking in the same voice during trance. Chanting a single phrase, the wall rebuilds itself. High Lords attempt to silence the phenomenon, but their orders crumble like sand before an unseen wind. Even the custodies sense it, an old rhythm of authority, a presence that once stood beside the Emperor with unwavering defiance. Meanwhile, the Great Rift claws deeper into reality, its madness gnawing at the Imperium's soul. Yet within that abyss, a silhouette moves, towering, armored, golden, but incomplete, like a memory sharpening into form. Demons flee from it, warp storms recoil from it. The thing, whatever it is, walks with purpose, tracing the scars of the Imperium as a mason studies cracks in a fortress wall. And everywhere its shadow passes, mortals feel an ache of discipline, duty, and unspoken judgment. On the training decks of Phalanx, Black Templars enter a state of silent fury as every auspex in the fortress monastery simultaneously flickers to life. A map appears ancient, precise, marked with fortification lines not used since the Siege of Terra. The hololith pulses like a beating heart. Tech Marines swear the device isn't projecting data, but receiving it from somewhere beyond known space. Sword Brothers feel their hands tremble, not in fear but recognition. This is Dorn's craft, his language, his calculations. The map ends at a point of light swallowed by warp static, but the final glyph is unmistakable: return. Captains argue, doubt, weigh the burden of hope against the danger of delusion. Yet deep in their hearts, their oaths ignite anew. Something familiar calls them back to the walls. something unbroken. In the ghost systems near the cicatrix, a derelict void fortress drifts, one unrecorded, uncharted, bearing sigils no loyal archive remembers. Explorers breach its hull and find corridors carved with impossible precision, as though shaped by a mind obsessed with structure and endurance. At its center lies a chamber illuminated by soft golden luminescence. On one wall, etched in grooves deep as battle scars, a message reads, "The last defense has yet to fall." Beneath it stands a towering figure molded of light and shadow, perfect in armor, faceless yet familiar. It does not move. It does not breathe. But as the explorers watch, it raises its head slightly, as if acknowledging them. Then the chamber closes, sealing behind adamantine slabs that no weapon can breach. Across the Imperium, a quiet dread spreads. The galaxy is being measured again. Aboard the battle barge Sol's Duty, an Imperial Fist librarian experiences a vision so overpowering it burns itself into the ship's memory core. He sees a colossal fortress in the warp, built not of stone, but of belief, pain, and unyielding resolve. At its apex stands Dorn changed, scarred by 10,000 years of unseen war, yet unmistakable. His eyes burn with purpose, but also with grief deeper than any chasm in the Imperium's history. He speaks a single command: prepare the walls. The librarian awakens screaming, his armor cracking under the pressure of psychic overload. The ship's reactors surge, responding to phantom orders. And the librarian swears, by every oath he has ever spoken, that the Primarch is not returning. He is already here. And he is choosing where to stand. Word spreads like wildfire. A golden figure was seen on the parapets of the palace, standing silently beneath the broken sky. The custodies rush to the location, but only find scorched stone and a lingering pressure in the air, as if someone immense had weighed the world with their gaze. Rumors infect the lower hive. Some claim he has come to judge the Imperium that survived without him. Others whisper that he returns to finish a war that began at the dawn of mankind's greatest sin. Saints fall into trances, scribbling fortification diagrams they do not understand. Guardsmen dream of a voice commanding them to stand firm, to hold, to endure. It spreads, unstoppable, undeniable. The defender of Terra is no longer a memory. He is a movement. And then across the void phalanx itself awakens. Entire decks illuminate in sequence, spells of activation murmuring through ancient mechanisms unused since the Horus Heresy. The fortress monkship aligns its trajectory without command, pointing toward a system shrouded in warp storm and secrecy. No chapter master can override it. No machine spirit explains it. The ship moves as if guided by a hand long believed severed. As battle alarms pulse through its hull, a silent figure is detected walking the forgotten causeway 7 feet tall, armored in shadows. Cameras fail, auspexes distort. Yet every warrior on board feels the same presence, cold, patient, calculating the Imperium's wounds with a strategist's precision. Something is assembling itself from memory, prophecy, and war. The galaxy holds its breath. Across 1,000 fronts, battle lines tremble not from fear of the enemy, but from the sense that they are being inspected, weighed, judged. On Phalanx's deepest deck, a sealed door begins to open, its mechanisms groaning like titans waking from slumber. Light spills through the widening gap, golden, harsh, commanding. A silhouette stands behind it, broad-shouldered, unmoving, as if waiting for the Imperium to decide whether it still deserves him. The warriors watching dare not speak. The air grows impossibly still. And just as the light intensifies, just as the figure steps forward, everything cuts to black. Systems die. Auspexes scream. Phalanx drifts. And in that perfect silence, a single sound echoes. Armored footsteps, walking toward a destiny the galaxy has forgotten to fear. The Imperium believes it is witnessing a return. It has not yet realized something far older is awakening with him. The silence after the blackout lingers like a wound that refuses to clot. Phalanx drifts in inert gloom, its machine spirits whispering incoherent fragments of prayer. Across the fortress ship, warriors awaken from forced unconsciousness, unsure whether they dreamed a silhouette stepping into the light or truly witnessed the impossible. Chaplains kneel in the dark, asking the Emperor for guidance, but their faith feels thin-stretched taut like a fraying rope above an abyss. In the stillness, a single truth settles like dust on a tomb. Something walked free when the lights died, something older than hope and heavier than memory. The warriors feel it not as a presence behind them, but within them, as though their purpose itself is being rewritten by unseen hands. No alarm sound, no orders come. Only the echo of steps continues somewhere deep within the ship's marrow. The custodians aboard the escorting vessels sense it too, an alteration in the air, subtle yet profound, as though the Phalanx has become a vessel not of war, but of judgment. Some among them whisper that a Primarch could bend reality around him, that his will alone could command the silence of the stars. Others feel a creeping dread that this presence is not the Dorn they expect, but something reforged by 10 millennia of unseen war. Their debate is hushed, almost fearful. For the first time in centuries, Golden Warriors, those who guard the Emperor himself, realize they do not know what watches from the dark between bulkheads. The loudest among them fall silent first, sensing a change in their own gene-forged instincts, as if loyalty itself tilts toward a new axis. Within the lower decks, mortal serfs huddle together, sharing rumors and voices trembling with awe and terror. Some insist they saw a figure of light stalking the hallways, its gaze like a blade that peeled away their thoughts. Others claim a shadow passed them by, leaving their knees weak and their faith hollowed. A handful speak of hearing a voice quiet, relentless, asking them how many walls they failed to hold. The serfs begin to fracture into factions, those who believe their Primarch has returned to save them, and those who fear he has come to judge them. The latter grows faster. Fear, after all, thrives more eagerly than hope, especially beneath ceilings stained with the blood of 1,000 lost crusades. In the Strategium, chapter masters gather around a hololithic map flickering with damage and distorted signals. The Phalanx's systems remain unresponsive, as though obeying a command issued from a source beyond mortal authority. Some argue this is Dorn's will, a prelude to his ascension, his reclamation of the Imperium's broken defenses. Others whisper treason, that something else, perhaps a weapon born of forgotten doctrines, has awakened. Tensions rise, oaths tremble. The leaders of Dorn's legacy find themselves divided not by ideology, but by fear that they may be unworthy of their father, or worse, that their father has returned to dismantle what they built in his absence. Their silence grows heavier with each passing moment, like chains forged from doubt. Far below, the librarius becomes a crucible of psychic agony. Librarians thrash in their armor as a barrage of visions tears through their minds. Walls collapsing, stars falling, Dorn standing atop a mountain of broken fortresses, his face carved with grief so cold it becomes its own kind of tyranny. They see him fighting shadows shaped like his sons. They see the Imperium burning from wounds inflicted by its own defenders. And above all, they hear his voice whispering a single truth. The enemy is already inside. When the visions cease, the librarians lie still, trembling. They no longer know whether they witnessed prophecy or the memory of a war the Imperium has no record of. In the ecclesiarchy shrines of Phalanx, priests ignite incense to purge the encroaching dread. But the smoke behaves unnaturally, curling into symbols unknown to Imperial liturgy. Some priests declare these markings Holy Dorn's forgotten script, a divine reminder of discipline. Others recoil, claiming the symbols resemble wards used during the darkest days of the heresy, meant not to sanctify but to imprison. One priest dares to speak the forbidden thought aloud, that perhaps Dorn did not willingly leave his sons, that perhaps he was sealed away as a danger even to the Imperium. The congregation gasps. Some fall upon the priest in fury. Others hesitate, because something in their hearts recognizes the possibility as truth long buried beneath propaganda and prayer. As the atmosphere grows thick with suspicion, Battle Brothers begin to experience strange compulsions, subtle, invasive impulses urging them to correct, to fortify, to dismantle existing command structures. These orders do not come from any superior. They rise from within, like instinct grafted onto their gene seed. Imperial fists feel its strongest, a relentless need to judge every weakness around them, including those of their fellow Astartes. Fists look at Templars with disdain. Templars look at fists with fury. And beneath the rising tension lies a darker suspicion. What if this impulse is not Dorn's will, but a corruption within their lineage, activated by the return of something they were never meant to embrace? On the ship's outer hull, a new symbol appears, a sigil carved with perfect precision into adamantine plating. It is unmistakably crafted by a Primarch's hand, yet its meaning is unknown. Tech Marines tremble as they translate what little they can. The symbol is not one of victory or vigilance. It is an indictment, a record, a countdown. The moment of last wall doctrine flares through their minds, a plan used only when the Imperium faces absolute extinction. But this sigil predates that doctrine. It implies one thing: Dorn had feared something greater than the heresy itself. And that something, whatever it was, has already begun to stir. Then, without warning, Phalanx's interior corridors crackle with golden light. The sealed gate that had opened in Part 1 flickers back into existence, but now it reveals more than a silhouette. A hand emerges, armored and immense, gripping the threshold as though restraining something behind it. Warriors witnessing the scene fall to their knees, some in worship, others in terror. The hand trembles not from weakness but from conflict. It is clear that whatever lies beyond the door is fighting to remain concealed. And then the door begins to close, not by mechanical force, but by the figure's will, as if denying the galaxy a truth that cannot survive. But not before a single fragment escapes. A voice, Dorn's voice, unmistakable, unbroken, whispers a name. A name the Imperium has spent 10,000 years pretending no longer exists. A name the High Lords have forbidden from every archive, every prayer, every oath. The warriors freeze, because the name Dorn speaks should never be spoken by a loyal son of the Emperor. The name Dorn whispered into the dark hangs like a noose across the Imperium. It coils around the minds of those who hear it, warriors, priests, navigators, tightening, suffocating, reshaping their thoughts with its terrible implication. In the hours that follow, no one speaks it aloud, yet all feel its gravity. The galaxy seems to tilt, as if the stars themselves recoil from a truth they refuse to acknowledge for 10 millennia. Within Phalanx, silence spreads like a wound. Warriors wander its halls in half-dream, half-prayer, haunted by the certainty that their entire legacy may be a corridor built on lies. Doubt becomes a second shadow that follows every step. Even the brightest souls feel themselves hollowing. Something in that whispered name gnaws at them, not a memory, but the echo of a memory erased. Beyond the walls of Phalanx, the wider Imperium shudders beneath growing tides of war. The Great Rift spits nightmares into the void, and entire crusades burn out like dying candles. Cardinals declare new litanies of vigilance, but fewer attend each mass. On a shrine world once known for its unwavering devotion, pilgrims gather in ash-lined streets and confess they no longer know what they are meant to defend. They sense the Imperium's faith is thinning, stretching like old parchment, tearing where hidden truths press from beneath. Some priests try to comfort the weak-hearted, but their sermons sound hollow even to themselves. They wonder quietly if the Emperor's silence is not divinity, but abandonment. And still, somewhere in the back of their trembling minds, the name whispered by Dorn claws for recognition. Among the sons of Dorn, the inner torment grows sharper, more intimate. One veteran of the Imperial Fists, his armor cracked and scorched by a lifetime of sieges, finds himself kneeling alone in a deserted chapel aboard Phalanx. He tries to pray, but every word falls dead from his tongue. Instead, memories surface unbidden. The Siege of Terra recited in catechisms, the tales of Dorn's sacrifice, the proclamation that their Primarch died for loyalty beyond reproach. Yet now that name unspoken, but alive slithers through his thoughts like a serpent. The veteran realizes that if Dorn uttered such a name, then the story of Dorn's disappearance cannot be what the Imperium taught. His faith fractures, not with rage, but with sorrow so vast it feels like a second soul dying within him. The chapel's candles flicker, as though something unseen breathes nearby. On the far edge of Imperial space, a Black Templar crusade fleet descends into madness. Their chaplains demand renewed purity, renewed zeal, but something has contaminated the very foundation of their conviction. Sword brothers awaken from restless dreams with visions of two figures standing upon a shattered fortress wall, one Dorn, the other a shadow bearing his features, his voice, his authority. The two are locked in conflict, neither yielding, neither breaking. The Templars attempt to purge such dreams with prayer and flame, yet the visions return stronger each night. Eventually, duels break out aboard the flagship, not from betrayal, but from warriors trying to carve answers out of each other. In desperation, the High Marshal locks himself in solitude, kneeling before the relics of their gene-sire, begging for a truth that does not destroy his oaths. On Terra itself, the High Lords convene behind sealed adamantium doors. Every censor is muted, every scribe dismissed. They are pale, trembling, aware that a forbidden truth has breached their defenses. One among them produces a dusty, unmarked tome stolen from archives that no longer officially exist. Within its pages lies the truth of the name Dorn, spoken exiled son, a legacy buried beneath the rubble of treachery and political survival. They debate whether the Imperium can survive if the truth spreads. Some argue for controlled revelation. Others insist on erasure through any means necessary, even if it means striking at Dorn's returning presence directly. But the most fearful among them whisper a darker possibility. What if Dorn's return is not a blessing, but a reckoning the Imperium was never meant to withstand? The psychers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica begin to suffer full-scale collapse. Across 1,000 worlds, they scream the same fragmented visions, two golden figures wreathed in fire, a wall splitting down the center, a throne cracking beneath the weight of conflicting legacies. Some psychers claw at their skulls, begging for the vision to end. Others whisper Dorn's name, then the Forbidden's name, alternating like a pendulum swinging between destiny and doom. The most powerful among them, driven mad by clarity, claim that the Emperor foresaw this moment, that two paths were carved into fate, but only one was meant to survive. Their hearts stop in the midst of confession, as though silenced by an unseen hand. The warp ripples. Something moves in the dark, listening. Meanwhile, deep within Phalanx, the shadows shift with purpose. Servitors malfunction, walking in patterns that mirror ancient fortification diagrams. Walls seem to change their angles, subtly but undeniably reshaping themselves, according to principles only a Primarch would know. Warriors grow uneasy, sensing they are no longer alone. Rumors spread of a presence wandering the sealed decks, its heavy steps echoing through corridors abandoned since the heresy. Some claim to glimpse a golden figure watching them from across vast hangar bays, its eyes cold with calculation. But when approached, nothing remains except the faint smell of scorched metal. Phalanx is not simply inhabited. It is being prepared. Then, in a sudden eruption of psychic shock, a conflict bursts into reality itself. The Forbidden's name manifests as a phantom silhouette, tall, armored, unmistakably kin to Dorn, standing in opposition to the golden presence stalking Phalanx. They do not speak, they do not touch, but the air between them vibrates with the tension of 10,000 years of silence. Those nearby collapse under the pressure, their minds filled with spiraling doubts, betrayal, sacrifice, exile, judgment. The two figures fade, one dissolving into gold, the other into shadow. but the impact lingers within every soul that witnessed the confrontation. Something ancient has been reawakened. In the wake of that clash, a relic chamber long sealed bursts open. Inside lies a colossal mural forgotten by history. It depicts Dorn standing beside another Primarch, one erased from Imperial record, each holding a fragment of a greater design. But the mural ends unfinished, the second figure's features violently chiseled away. Beneath it lies a single inscription, revealed now by failing stasis fields. 2 walls built. Only one may stand. The warriors who read it feel the ground tilt beneath them. Their lineage is not a legacy of unity, but a fracture older than the Imperium itself. And as the realization spreads like fire, Phalanx trembles not from attack, but from within. A new presence steps into the open, shedding shadow like a serpent shedding old skin. Its armor is golden, yet cracked. Its eyes burn with purpose, yet haunted by a war no mortal has known. It is Dorn, and it is not Dorn. A single figure, split by history, reforged by exile, awakened with both judgment and fury. The saga's path shifts. The galaxy will not know which son has truly returned, until it is far too late to stop him. The figure, Dorn yet not Dorn, stands beneath the trembling vaults of Phalanx, and the air around him fractures like glass under the weight of a truth too vast to bear. Warriors feel the tremor ripple through their armor, their gene seed reacting as if recognizing an ancient command and an ancient betrayal at once. Some fall to one knee out of instinctual reverence. Others recoil, sensing a duality within the figure that threatens to split their souls. The fortress ship hums with awakening purpose, its machine spirits singing a discordant hymn of recognition and fear. In that moment, it becomes clear. Devotion is no shield against revelation. Every oath they have ever spoken now feels like a blade pointed inward. And the figure golden, cracked, unbroken gazes upon them with a sorrow so absolute it might be mistaken for judgment. Outside the Phalanx, war spreads like a wound made sentient. Lost fleets answer phantom summons. Demonic incursions intensify as if drawn by the scent of fracturing destiny. Imperial commanders attempt to rally their forces, but their conviction falters each time they recall the whispered truth Dorn revealed. If one Primarch could be hidden, erased, rewritten, how many others were crafted from lies? The Imperium feels suddenly small, fragile, its grandeur nothing more than a monument built atop the bones of buried secrets. Faith becomes a battlefield in itself. Some cling harder, praying more fervently, fighting more brutally, while others crumble, realizing the Emperor's silence may not be restraint, but consequence. And in the darkness of warp-torn space, something vast stirs at the edge of perception, drawn toward the Imperium's unraveling certainty. Among the sons of Dorn, conflict brews like a storm locked behind iron. Imperial fists stare upon their reflections in ceramite, questioning what remains of their identity. Black Templars sharpen blades in silence, their zeal flickering like guttering candles. Crimson fists whisper doubts they never dared voice. The apparition's presence gnaws at them. They feel torn between two legacies, two truths, two fathers. One represents the stoic fortress, the unwavering wall. The other represents something abandoned, condemned, yet unmistakably kin. The warriors sense that whichever lineage prevails will define their future and the Imperium's. Some begin marking their armor with half-formed sigils, uncertain whether they are honoring Dorn or defying him. In their silence lies a terror deeper than any demon, the fear that loyalty itself has become a weapon turned against them. Across Terra, the High Lords move through shadowed corridors like ghosts of a dying empire. They draft proclamations they dare not release, edicts meant to reshape history yet again. Some argue for unveiling the truth, that a forgotten Primarch walks once more. Others insist on erasure, fearing the Imperium would shatter beneath the weight of confession. They do not know that even as they argue, their astropaths bleed from the eyes, receiving visions of twin golden giants striding across a field of collapsing fortresses, The Senatorum grows paranoid, alliances fracture. The faintest whisper becomes potential heresy. They sense the Imperium is not merely endangered, it is being weighed, measured, judged. And they fear that its sins will prove too great for any Primarch to ignore. Within the Mechanicus, ancient forge worlds tremble as long-dormant protocols reactivate without command. Titan manufactories awaken, their reactors pulsing with golden light. Tech priests chant Ben-Huruk warnings, terrified by the patterns forming in their noospheric linkages patterns, matching the architecture of a mind they believed lost. Some proclaim it divine resurgence. Others recognize the threat of a mind too precise, too calculating, too burdened with unspoken judgment. A schism threatens to erupt within the priesthood, those who would serve the returning figure as a living code, and those who fear he brings the death of their machine god's dominion. Sparks of discord crackle across the galaxy, each one a symptom of deeper truths rising like leviathans beneath the ocean's surface. The warp reacts violently. Storms coil around entire sectors, snarling astropathic signals and dragging ghost ships from centuries past into the present. Demon princes howl in delight, sensing a fracture in the Imperium's spiritual armor. Yet some flee, recognizing an older terror descending a force that once carved citadels out of raw reality during the Great Crusade. In the Imperium, a colossal shape manifests, a fortress of willpower and wrath. Two figures stand within it, indistinguishable in silhouette. When they clash, the warp itself recoils. Mortal psychers writhe, screaming of two walls, one truth, before their hearts burst within their chests. The galaxy understands only one thing: destiny is diverging. Phalanx itself enters metamorphosis. Corridors shift. Citadels rise from the deck like stones summoned from forgotten memory. Sections of the fortress ship realign into patterns no architect alive can decipher. As battle brothers traverse its ever-changing interior, they feel the press of two conflicting presences. One is familiar, stern, immovable. The other feels like a wound given shape, exiled, scarred, burning with a righteousness denied for 10,000 years. Sometimes the air chills. Sometimes it ignites. The warriors move cautiously, aware they walk upon a battlefield not of stone, but of legacy. They no longer fear death. They fear which truth will claim them when the final revelation comes. The figure Dorn yet not moves through phalanx like a doomed constellation, each step echoing through the deck with the inevitability of judgment. He pauses before relics carved in his image, his gaze unreadable. Some see longing, others see regret. A few see wrath barely contained. When he finally speaks, his voice carries through every hall like a funeral toll. The wall must be made whole. The words strike each listener differently: promise, warning, command. And yet no one knows which wall he means: the Imperium, his lineage, or something older still. His presence warps the very notion of loyalty, twisting it into a question with no safe answer. From the depths of phalanx, alarms finally ignite, silent at first, then rising into a wail that drowns the stars. A rift tears open in the stratagem. Not warp-spawned, but memory-born. Through it emerges a vision: the forgotten Primarch, the erased sun, standing upon a broken world with Dorn beside him, both calling for unity, both betrayed by those they defended. The vision cracks apart as phalanx shudders, its engines screaming in refusal. Warriors fall to their knees as realization dawns: the Imperium did not lose a Primarch. It buried him. In the final moments before fate strikes, the golden figure halts before a sealed chamber, one none aboard knew existed. It opens without command. Within lies a throne carved from the bones of long-lost fortresses. The figure steps toward it, armor shedding shards of light and shadow, and something inside that chamber awakens. The storm did not break so much as it unfurled, peeling open the night like a wound that had always been waiting. The first shock of impact struck with a violence that split the horizon in two, and in that tearing light, the warriors who had come this far, saw the sum of all their choices reflected back at them. They advanced, though their limbs shook, though the weight of oaths broken and promises shattered pulled at their souls like chains forged from their own regrets. Bolter fire roared in jagged bursts, each report an accusation hurled against the void, while the silence that followed every barrage felt like a prayer flung into the indifferent dark. And through it all loomed the enemy, vast, ancient, and impossibly calm, as if the universe itself had taken form to judge them. They pressed on because there was nothing left behind them but ashes, and nothing ahead but the truth they feared most. When the ground split beneath their feet and the sky bled with fire, the revelation arrived in fragments, a voice whispering from the core of reality, a memory older than the first star, a pattern glimpsed in the ruins of every world they had ever crossed. It struck them with the force of a dying sun. Their destiny had not been written by gods, but by the wounds inflicted upon creation itself. The realization shattered their formation, scattered their hope, and summoned a howl of psychic dread that tore through armor and bone with equal cruelty. Yet amid the collapse, a single figure rose, blood running like ink across ceramite, raising a blade that trembled with purpose. His scream cut through the storm, not in defiance but in acceptance, and in that moment the battlefield itself bent, as if acknowledging a sacrifice already written into its soil. Around him, warriors fell, shadows burned, and the air turned white with the brilliance of ending things. The clash that followed was too vast for mortal senses, too intimate for myth. Time slowed, stretched, fractured. Hammers swung through centuries. Shields broke across epochs. A psionic wave surged outward, catching the dying and the defiant alike, lifting them into the air like relics caught in the breath of a god. The enemy's form flickered, no longer a shape but an idea, a wound inflicted upon reality, screaming with the echoes of every forgotten sin. The warriors who remained hurled themselves into the heart of that wound, their battle cries dissolving into static, their souls burning with the knowledge that each heartbeat pushed the galaxy one breath closer to judgment. And in the shattering instant when steel met the impossible, all sound collapsed into absolute silence, a silence that felt like a tomb closing on everything they once believed. It was in that silence that the final act unfolded, slow, mournful, inevitable. The central figure stepped forward, each footfall heavy with the cost of the lives that trailed behind him like fading constellations. The enemy towered above him, but something within its vastness hesitated, as though the revelation that had broken the warriors had cut into its own essence as well. He raised his blade, its light trembling like a dying star, and for a moment all the fury, all the ruin, all the centuries of unspoken grief converged upon that single fragile point. He did not shout, he did not plead. He simply breathed, a final exhausted breath that carried every soul he carried with him, and he drove the blade upward in one clean, perfect arc. The world broke open, light poured out. A scream that was not a scream, but an unmaking rolled across the void. And then, darkness. In the aftermath, the battlefield was nothing but drifting ash and the faint echo of something ancient withdrawing into the deep. The surviving warriors staggered among the ruins, their breaths shallow, their minds scorched by truths they could no longer name. The sky was quiet now, too quiet, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath to see what had changed. And something had changed subtly, profoundly, eternally. A new pattern whispered at the edge of perception, carved into the bones of creation by the sacrifice that had split the storm. None could speak of it, none could understand it, but all felt it, like a cold hand resting against the back of the soul. And as the wind swept across the remains of a broken world, carrying with them the ash of heroes and monsters alike, the galaxy shifted, just slightly, as though preparing for the next shadow to rise. The dust had not yet settled when the galaxy seemed to exhale one long, tremoring breath that carried with it the weight of every fallen oath and every small act of courage that had dared to defy the night. In the quiet that followed, The ruins of shattered cathedrals stood like broken prayers, their stained glass saints reduced to fragments that glittered faintly beneath the cold starlight. A lone remembrancer walked among them, his quill trembling not from fear, but from the overwhelming solemnity of recording the last echoes of an age. He paused beside a collapsed altar, where a faded banner lay half buried in ash, its once vibrant sigils worn almost smooth by fire and time. He touched the cloth as though expecting it to pulse with the memory of those who had carried it, but it remained still silent, as if even history had grown weary of blood. Beyond the ruin, the remains of the battlefield stretched in every direction, a gray plain where the wind moved softly through the bones of titans and infantry alike. There were no cries here, no triumphs, no laments, only the thin whistle of air through sundered armor and the faint metallic scent of endings. The remembrancer stepped lightly between the fallen, careful not to disturb the final postures of warriors who had given their last breath to shape a destiny they would never see. A single helm caught his eye, half crushed, its visor cracked open to reveal nothing but dust. He wondered if the soul once within it had found peace, or if it still wandered the endless dark, searching for a cause worth dying for. The quiet offered no answer. At the edge of the plain stood a monument that had once been a fortress, its ramparts collapsed inward like a titan kneeling in remorse. The sky above it was clear now, washed clean of fire and psychic storm, revealing stars that flickered with a fragile, uncertain light. The remembrancer lifted his gaze to them, imagining each as a candle set upon the tomb of the galaxy. Their distant glimmer seemed to mourn the lives extinguished below, or perhaps to offer the faintest promise that not all illumination had been lost. Yet even this comfort was thin. For every star shining, dozens had died in silence, swallowed by the wars that had carved the soul of the cosmos into a graveyard. Was this victory, he wondered, or merely the absence of further ruin? In a hollow valley carved by orbital bombardment, water had begun to pool, not from rain, but from condensation gathering upon cooling stone. It formed a mirror as still as death, reflecting the broken spires above. The remembrancer knelt beside it, tracing a finger along its surface. Ripples spread outward, as though awakening something ancient beneath the calm. In the undisturbed depths, he saw the faint outline of faces, heroes, monsters, blurring together into a single indistinguishable mosaic of sacrifice. He withdrew his hand, allowing the mirror to settle once more. Some stories, he realized, were not meant to be told. Some truths were too vast, too sorrowful to be shaped by mortal language. Perhaps the dead preferred it that way. A cathedral ship drifted overhead, its engines long silent, its hull fractured in a pattern that resembled the ribs of a colossal, dying beast. From within its carcass fell motes of sanctified ash, drifting down upon the world like snow. The remembrancer lifted his cloak as the gray flakes settled upon his shoulders and the pages of his chronicle, each speck a memory carried from battlefields beyond counting. He let them fall freely. There was no cleansing these remnants, no restoring them to purity. They were all that remained of those who had prayed, fought, and fallen in the name of a truth that now felt distant, veiled by centuries of divine silence. How many voices had shattered against that silence without ever receiving an answer? A wind rose from the west, carrying with it the faint chime of broken bells swaying in the ruins. Their hollow music drifted through the valley like lamentation, weaving between skeletal trees and collapsed sanctuaries. The remembrancer followed the sound, drawn as though by instinct, until he reached what had once been a shrine to hope. Its entrance lay open, its interior swallowed in shadow. Inside, candles long melted into rivers of wax still clung to the cracked floor. He knelt among them, whispering a prayer not to any god, but to the memory of belief itself. Was faith merely the light we carried within ourselves, he wondered, or a fire stolen from something greater? If so, who or what had lit that first flame? Night sank slowly over the world, casting long silhouettes across the debris. Stars emerged one by one, though their light seemed hesitant, as if fearful to illuminate the scars carved across the land. The remembrancer set up his lantern and continued writing, his quill scratching softly against parchment. He recorded not the names of the victors, nor the boasts of conquest, only the small, human moments that might otherwise be lost, the clasped hands of dying comrades, the silent courage of those who rose again and again, the final breath of a hero whose identity had already been erased by war. These were the fragments that defined an age. These were the truths worth preserving. Dawn crept across the horizon like a cautious messenger, hesitant to reveal what remained. The light was thin, almost fragile, its warmth struggling against the chill of the devastated earth. The remembrancer stood among the ruins, watching as color slowly returned to stone and steel. In the gentle illumination, he could see how the scars of battle formed patterns lines etched like constellations across the ground, intersections of sorrow and defiance. Perhaps, he thought, this too was a kind of scripture, the story of a species that refused to yield even when the universe recoiled from it. But at what cost did such endurance come? How many futures had been burned away to preserve the present? As the sun climbed higher, a single figure appeared on a distant ridge, armor battered, posture bent, yet unmistakably alive. The remembrancer raised a hand in greeting, though the warrior did not respond. Instead, the figure gazed across the battlefield as though searching for someone who would never return. The weight of grief hung from their shoulders like a mantle forged of memory and regret. After a long, unmoving moment, the warrior turned away, disappearing into the brightness of the rising day. The remembrancer watched until the figure was gone, then lowered his gaze with a sigh. Survival, he realized, was its own burden, one that demanded strength beyond blade or bolter. By midday, the remembrancer reached the final page of his chronicle. He paused, letting the quill hover over the parchment as he searched for words suitable to close an age. None came. In the end, he simply allowed the ink to flow in a single line, thin, quiet, unfinished. Because no ending, he realized, could truly encapsulate what had transpired. The wars would return. The shadows would rise. The stars would dim and flare and die. But the memory of those who stood against the abyss, that memory would echo as long as someone chose to bear witness. He closed the book gently, letting dust settle upon its cover like a final blessing. If you have walked with us through this long, solemn journey, stand witness a little longer. Like, subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments so the chronicle may continue.